In the previous video, I mentioned how secret to creativity is knowing how to hide your resources. Well, in order for you to be creative, you should be also inspired, right? Those two things kind of go together. So I want to show you a couple of photographers who inspired me. Actually, their work inspired me. And also, since I couldn't get the permissions, most people didn't reply, so I couldn't get the permissions to show you or to record websites of all the other photographers and retouches that I wanted to show you. Those names will be provided, as well as this one, in a PDF file or a set of links, and there will be a brief description under each of the names, so you can kind of have a sense of what it is that I find inspiring among all those individuals. Well, let's start with Gavin O'Neill. Now, he's a photographer. I think he's a fashion photographer. And of all the people on the list, I think he's the one that inspired me the most. There is something about his work that I value greatly, and I think it kind of influenced my way of working and my way of thinking much more than any other photographer. I don't know the man personally. I only exchange a few lines of text with him on forums. But, there's a saying, if your work speaks for itself, don't interrupt. And I think that, I'm sure he's a great person, but it didn't stop me from learning and getting inspired from his work. And I think that's one of the greatest compliments you can give to somebody. Because many people in the photographers, even retouchers, tend to express themselves through their work. Well, what I found so amazing about his work is that he has retouched images, but when you look at him, they don't look retouched. They look perfect. And I think that's one of the key elements that I wanted to mention, and I didn't have a chance to show it to you in a proper way before. Now, when somebody sees your work and says, that's a great retouch, I mean, if some other retoucher tells you that, that's kind of complimentary, because that other retoucher knows the effort you put into the image. But if somebody who is a photographer or somebody off the street or editor or just a reader of a magazine tells you, wow, that's a great retouch, I don't think that's such a great compliment, right? He should say, or she should say, it's a compelling image. Now that's a compliment, because we don't want to show them behind the scenes and be impressed with that more than what the end results was. It's like when watching a Hollywood movie, right? Let's say when you first saw Jurassic Park or I don't know, Star Wars or some other movie that has great special effects, you wanted to be wowed with the effects themselves. It's great to show you the behind the scenes and how they did it, but when you're in the movie, when you're in the moment, you don't want to watch behind the scenes. You want to watch the movie. That's pretty much the same thing here. When I see images, I want to see images that I find compelling, that move me, that inspire me. And then I would like to, since being a retoucher myself, I like to see the how it's done. But for the main purpose of this video, we're not going to be talking about how everything was done, or especially not in detail. I could only guess in many ways, but in other ways, I don't want to give up too many secrets and give some cherished secrets of those photographers away to the public. But since this is a title about retouching with dodging and burning, mainly when retouching with dodging and burning, you retouch because you want to retouch not only globally, you want to retouch the skin as well. And the reason why I'm showing these images is not because this is the only thing that you can do with dodging and burning, but this is a type of image where dodging and burning is one of the main tools used to retouch an image. If you're a photographer for a different background, then you shouldn't limit yourself to just watching how maybe weddings or whatever you're using dodging and burning for is done. I think you should also expand your views and take a look at different images from different genres and see how they manage to retouch their images, because then you can use that knowledge and blend it with what you already have And the more knowledge from different areas you have, and the better you blend it, you're going to create another unique content, something that's more valuable and harder to copy. And the thing about these images from Kevin O'Neill is that they look very natural. I mean, when you take a look at the skin texture and skin color, they look very natural, yet they look perfect. And I think that blend is something that I don't see all that too often. Plus, the skin texture, the skin pores are so visible and they look so great. I mean, I'm not sure if you can see this on this video because there will be some compression artifacts, but if you visit the link and take a look at your own big screen monitor, then you will see this much better. Well, let's get back to the beginning. So of this, I was under his section for skin, page 1. What inspired me is something that I just mentioned in a previous few minutes, but if you want to take a look at these images, I mean, it's hard not to get inspired. And especially this is something, as a side note, his skin color, his color correction is something that I find also very inspiring, and I try to emulate in many ways. But of course, most of this cannot be done as an end result if you don't have the rest of the team, the model, the makeup, the makeup artist, the hairstylist, the retoucher, of course, not only the photographer. So it has to be everyone in the team. And some, I'm sure, are just 2-man job or 3-man job, but some are more people and were involved in working on this. There had to be. And also he has some male models here as well. So you can take a look. For instance, this is an interesting example where a male model has even some freckles, it seems, but he also has some unshaven beard. So when you're doing dodging and burning and removing all those little black patches in the skin, you also can work between the individual hairs and therefore create something that looks retouched and flawless. And here you can see that the entire body was worked on. I mean, you can still see all the muscle definition in a perfect way, and it's not exaggerated to the point that it looks fake. It looks like natural light, and then all those black patches that were that didn't deserve to be there on such an image, though, all those were removed. And here you can see some other images. You can browse them through yourself. Now let's take a look at the page number 2. Some more beauty shots. And I mean, they're just flawless images. And you can really take a look at this yourself and study them. And if this is something that you find inspiring, then try to emulate that, because when you're starting out, it's hard to quote unquote find your style. I think style just happens to come from more retouching and working on it, and then basically after a while you kind of develop confidence and you start doing things your own way, and then after a while people start to follow that, or they think that's unique, and all of a sudden the style is born. But if you try to figure out a style on in the beginning, yeah, that's great, but it's also very dangerous, because you're not going to be learning as much, but you are potentially creating something untainted, if you will. So I think it's a fine balance of being yourself, being confident in what you do and what you want, and trying to learn from other people, because you want to be creative, you want to be inspired, and for that you need to look for different sources. Then you just hide them so that nobody knows about them. But here I don't want to keep any secrets. I don't think I did throughout this training title. I just talked about things that were interesting to me, and I thought that you might be interested as well. Let's take a look at his latest work section. There's some advertisement here. There's some great look. I mean, just all of his work is just amazing to me. Some images we already saw. Others you can watch on your own. And if you're interested, I mean, if you find this inspiring just as I do, then study those, try to see, because the more time you spend looking at an image, the more hours you spend looking at different images, your eyes will become better at seeing individual things that you didn't see before. So after a while, you start to see the pattern. But the funny thing is that you don't see it consciously. It becomes something embedded subconsciously in your mind. So after you watch 2,000 images, for instance, of similar sort like this, you will start to see patterns, but you won't be aware of those yet. So when you compare that with your own work or with some other work, you will immediately know, okay, this is something that's not supposed to be there, or this is something that's different, or wait a minute, this is not what I was looking for. And then later, after a while, you will start to consciously notice those things. And then you can talk to other people, and you can talk to yourself and tell, okay, this is something that bothers me because of this, this, and this. And once you reach that point, then with all the 10,000 brushstrokes, if you can remember, that you practice with, it's going to become like a second nature. The thing that I talked about, the unconscious competence. All right, now let's take a look at the next photographer. I think his name, I believe it's pronounced Thomas Mangieri. I'm not sure if that's the right pronunciation of it. I do apologize if it's not. He's also a fashion photographer, and he has some very interesting images, very beauty images. You can see close-ups, very clean work, a lot of dodging and burning on the skin, and in some images it's very, very visible. I mean, just skin is perfect, and it's really inspiring just how much work went into retouching something like that, because in some images there's quite a bit of skin. Let me go back to the beginning. Oh, here's something else that I wanted to mention. Freckles. Typically in fashion, and I think in general, you should always leave the freckles as much as possible, because freckles are not something that you see every day exactly, right? Not everyone has freckles. They're rare. Anything that is rare is valuable. Plus, it makes the image that much more interesting. It kind of gives it another interesting dimension. So it's not just any face, it's a face with freckles. And the first thing that people notice is, wow, freckles, that's cute. So you should always leave them. But that poses another problem. How do you retouch a skin without any filters and everything and still leave all the freckles? Well, they do it with dodging and burning, but it's in many ways painstaking process to manually try to figure out what it is that you need to dodge. For instance, some black patch of skin, like the ones that we worked on, and what is exactly a freckle here. And again, with practice, you should be able to notice the difference. And also, when you show before and after very often, then you kind of get to see the whole image, and it's kind of easier to notice what exactly what is the freckle and what is the place where you needed to work on. So just something to keep in mind. Here's some skin area, not sure. Oh, here's another image with freckles. I think it's the same model, and it's so subtle, right? I mean, plus her side of the face here is in shadow, so it's not that harsh transition there between shadow and highlights. Everything is kind of in the shadow, this entire face, so those freckles really don't stand out as much as it did in the previous image, because that was a pretty contrasty black and white conversion, and this is not, so they kind of blend in with the image, and they even look even better, in my opinion. Here's another example. There's a good close-up of the skin that was retouched. Here's a very good close-up of the area here around the eye, where you can see the individual skin pores very nicely. Here's an even better example of skin around, close-up of the mouth and skin around it. Beautiful. Here's another example where you have to retouch with, let's say, dodging and burning, but you also, like with freckles, you have to worry about makeup. In this case, there's some kind of gilded sprinkles or something, I don't know. So somebody who retouched this had to work between the individual these golden patches, which is kind of challenging, but the results is pretty impressive. Here you can see definitely, especially on the dark skin model, and here is an Asian model, and there's quite a bit of difference in skin. Asian models have quite pale skin usually, and therefore there's less retouching to be involved, and the skin pores are not as visible. While with dark skin models, you can clearly see the individual pores. But I mean, it's not about pores. If the image doesn't require pores, like for instance, here we don't have that much visible pores, but it doesn't mean that it's a bad image by any means, right? It's just a different style of image. Here's some delicate retouching. There was one image. I'll try to find it here really quickly. There it is. Here you can see a dark skin model, which is probably the hardest. Actually, you have to work the most on the skin because of the dark pigment. But if you take a look, I mean, there's quite a bit of skin here, and all the individual shadows and highlights were preserved, while individually, on a pixel level, all that individual black patches on the skin, and I'm sure this one had a lot, were removed very delicately. Beautiful work. And here is another example of it. So basically, I can go on and on like this, but basically, all those images and all those people that I will send you in terms of links are very inspiring, at least to me, because I do appreciate the hard work as a team and as well as from a retoucher standpoint. Plus, the end image is also something that I find quite compelling. So I think that's, if you want to be inspired, you can start with mine images and then branch out from that and find new resources on your own that kind of suit your way of thinking, your way of inspiring. And eventually, if you immerse yourself into this world, right, if you watch this DVD, if you practice a lot, if you take a look at different inspirational material, if you hang out on forums, if you talk to people, you can become a very good retoucher at this, even from your living room. You don't need to be in some studio where they will teach you everything. Yeah, that's true, but also everybody doesn't have that opportunity, and not everybody wants to work in a studio. People want to be freelance, so why not take the most advantage of this technology and try to immerse yourself in the world as much as possible virtually. And the same line of thought will be there. So eventually you will become better. There's no doubt. And hopefully I concluded enough with this to give you kind of an inspiration of what did I do with this quick demonstration of individual work, because I wanted to show you not only because I don't have all those images retouched, right? So there are certain things that I wanted to mention and I couldn't because I didn't have all those images retouched, that I have all the permissions that I can show. So I think this pretty much concludes this video, and thank you for watching. And also I think this concludes this training title, so hopefully you didn't find it too boring and you find something of use in it. Thank you for watching.